So, um, I've always have worked in social impact. I've been using creativity and self-expression as a form of my own activism. And no one ever told me that you don't pursue a mission-driven career. And so I feel like to our conversation about AI, we need good-hearted people in all positions in government, in nonprofits, inside companies. We need artists, we need organizers in order to really drive the change that we need. And if you have taken a look at the headlines lately, I mean, at any given minute, there is some disaster or crisis happening somewhere in the world. And it's really easy to feel anxious and angry, apathetic, even. And all those feelings are really valid. And since a kid, I've just always have been motivated to problem solve using my own creative skills. And so the world is on fire, we know that. And we unfortunately live in a society where oppression is normalized. And for those of us who can, see through the illusion, where we have the choice to either perpetuate or try something different and new. And so if you're in that camp where you want to try something different and new, right? Whether it's in sustainability, corporate social responsibility, we are change makers, we are leaders, and we need to pursue our passions because those are the lanes in which I personally feel like we would find the most success. Um, and so I know that everything sucks right now. And, especially as you think ahead to the next 4, 8, 20 years. I mean, I think the last time I looked at statistics, we might not have fish in our oceans by 2030. It's pretty dismal. But I say that we have to be apocalyptic yet radically optimistic or courageously optimistic. Um, and I think my career is an example of how that can manifest for you. And one of the quotes that really has inspired me since my college days is this quote by Dr. Howard Thurman, who is actually the mentor for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And this quote says, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it, because what the world needs is people who have come alive." And when you double click on what does come alive mean, to me, it means what brings you joy? What gets you so excited that ideas come naturally to you and you have unlimited energy to continue researching or working on a project? We need more inventors and innovators and change makers who are gonna like break out the status quo that is, heading us in the wrong direction. We're heading in the wrong direction. We can all agree on that. And so to take a step back, one thing that you should know about me is that I'm first generation Puerto Rican. Um, what that means is I am one of the first in my family to grow up within the mainland of the United States. And as a result, I'm also the first granddaughter and the first cousin. So I'm like the first to do a lot of things. And so I didn't necessarily have an older brother or a cousin to really help me understand how to operate in the US. And my parents, English is their second language. My dad was in the military in the US Army, so we moved around a lot. So all my life, I've been I've had the opportunity to like make friends across different cultures and backgrounds. I was born in Germany. I've lived on the West Coast, on the East Coast, and even as an adult, I've kept on moving and traveling. And I think this part of my story really is foundation to how I view the world. And so I've always been a conscious and curious creative, as well as highly ambitious. And that has shown up as, for example, me co-founding the Bully Free Council, when I was in grade school. I've been a victim of bullying, and I saw how frustrating and upsetting it was to see bystanders, right? People not doing something when a fellow classmate is being taunted. And so I used my creativity, my skills, love for music and playing instruments to pen a song called the Bully Blues. And I performed this song in front of, in the auditorium as a way to launch the Bully Free Council. When I was in high school, I went to a unique high school where you could either major in health sciences or in business. And I was always fascinated by business. I grew up in New Haven, Connecticut, which is about an hour and a half away from New York City. And so I was always like fascinated and enamored by this idea of like working in Manhattan in a skyscraper with a suit and a briefcase. Like I really thought that was cool. Like this is a picture of me in high school. I was already donning the suits. Like I knew, like I wanted to work in business. And so I took a business or an entrepreneurship class where our task was come up with a business idea. So to come up with a business idea, you first have to identify a problem to solve. The problem that I identified was the fact that my grandmother, who's been in this country for more than 50 years, still doesn't know English to a degree where she can appropriately advocate for herself when she goes to the doctors. And I know that she's not the only person who deals with translation issues and lack of interpreter services when you go to the court or when you go to a medical appointment or a legal appointment, etc. So I came up with this business idea called TransTalk LLC, where we would have affordable interpreter services and that will accompany you to your appointment, whether it was a 30-minute appointment or a 60-minute appointment, etc. I designed this logo and brochure. And back in the day, instead of Canva, we had Microsoft Publisher. And I loved just making flyers. And I was like going bilingual with it. Like I was really having fun. And so as a kid, I loved to read and I loved to write and I love music. And so you can see that I found like things that I loved doing as a kid, I just leaned into them and continued to explore like how can I use this to express myself and also build my career. So for college, I went to a university called Boston University in Boston, and I majored in public relations. And throughout my time at BU, I really made an effort to get involved. I co-founded a Tumblr for the Latino community called BU Latino. I was the editor in chief. I was in various different leadership positions for the Latino student group called Alianza Latina. And I also worked in the student activities office where I got to help all the student groups plan their events, which also meant I knew where all the free pizza and food was, which was always a nice, hookup to have. Um, and to this day, I'm still so close with a lot of my college friends. And now that I run my own business, my college friends are in positions where they're able to hire me for our services, and I can refer them and vice versa. Another example of this, for example, sorry, another example of building community and not knowing not like underestimating networking horizontally with your peers is that I went to school with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is now or was one of the youngest Congress people coming out of New York. And so, sure, like college might have been 15 years ago, but 15 years later, now we have change makers and leaders and innovators in positions and positions of power where we have more ability to make change and make decisions. The other thing that I did when I was in college was I interned like it was my full-time job, literally. Usually people start interning their junior year of college, but I was such a eager beaver and hungry to learn beyond the classroom that I started interning my freshman year of college. So by the time I graduated 4 years later, I had 10 internship experiences under my belt from working at a fashion PR agency in Madrid, Spain, where I got to study abroad, to working at a nonpartisan voter rights organization in downtown Boston. And in all those experiences, I was really trying to figure out how can I use the power of PR for social good? Because I learned how it can be used for bad. And I didn't want to use these skills to promote products that people don't need, right? I really want to promote it for beliefs or causes or initiatives that matter and make a difference. And so I worked at creative agencies that have nonprofit clients. I worked inside nonprofits in their communications department. And this is a screenshot of my resume when I was in college. Like I was really about it. Not only did I love the color purple and get creative with my layout, but I was really, by the time I graduated college, I had clarity about what I liked, what I didn't like, what it was like to work with people in a corporate environment versus a nonprofit environment. And nothing beats experience. You don't know until you try. So that's why it's so important to just keep learning and say yes to opportunities that sound interesting and that sound fun to you. So when it comes to following your fun, this has taken me to different creative agencies between Massachusetts and California. I've gotten to travel the world. I've had the chance to go to places like London for my work. I've gotten the opportunity to work with brands like Keds, Johnson and Johnson on corporate social responsibility and environmental initiatives. And and even an example to show you of how much fun I was having on this topic, I even had a blog, a Tumblr, back in the day called Buzz and Blend, where the premise was, and this actually got me a lot, this opened a lot of doors for me when I would apply for internships, because at the time, if you had a blog or you were active online, it just wasn't the same content creator scene as it is today. So it really made you stand out. And if an employer were to Google you and your blog came up and you're talking about what you love and what your area of expertise is, it's going to add some points to your interview process. And so I had a blog where I mixed my passion for PR and cosmetics. So I would essentially like blog about like sustainability campaigns from beauty brands. I would even like provide critique about like the consumerism behind beauty as well. And actually, ultimately, I had one beauty related experience that taught me, this kind of feels like Devil Wears Prada, and I'm not that kind of girl. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to run in heels across New York City to run this errand at this unrealistic deadline. Like, it was just too much. I'm like, I just want to work with nonprofits who are doing good. So, so yeah, I whenever I stopped having fun at a company, I moved on. I got another job. You don't have to stay at a job if you're not having fun, because you know what happens when you don't have fun? It starts to eat at your health. That's real talk. So, some examples of work that I've done in the environmental and sustainability realm include working with brands like Johnson and Johnson. Here in example number two, they had a campaign called Care to Recycle, and the whole goal was to raise awareness on the fact that there's a ton of products in your bathroom that can go in the recycling bin, but most of us keep our recycling bin in the kitchen. So how do we create awareness and the behavior change to make sure that people are recycling shampoo bottles, etc.? Um, I also got to get a little bit nerdy. So I was published in this book talking about the making and marketing of sustainable brands, and I used Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is a psychology framework, and use that to interpret how we might learn from that and apply it to sustainability marketing because not everyone cares about the polar bears, but I bet you everyone cares about clean water, right? So when you market different issues to people, you have to make sure that you're talking to the right people and what they care about if you want them to take an action or make change. Sometimes it's also unpredictable. Like, I don't think anyone really thought that a straw, the plastic straw will, spark this worldwide shift to paper straws, but it happened and we're better off for it. Not perfect, but it's a step in the right direction. Um, I also had the chance to work and consult for FEMA. Um, which is one of the federal agencies that is focused on emergency management and disaster response. So this was a really interesting project where I was working with emergency responders like firefighters, police officers, the military, um, and essentially looking like working on climate mitigation. And what that means is we already have data that says that this area gets a lot of fires, this river always floods. So, how might we build infrastructure? How might we, you know, plant the right trees to avoid flooding? I mean, there's a lot of complexity and nuance that goes into problem solving some of these bigger structural city urban design problems as it relates to climate. And it was mind blowing and also a little depressing because I was in the room with people who, as a like matter of factly acknowledge that in a disaster, we're always going to experience loss of life, loss of property, and that you just got to accept it and try to save as many people as you can, right? And after a while, that really weighed heavy on me and my spirit. I really credit people who can work in disaster response because we need people like that, you know? We need players in opposition. So if you're strong and like adrenaline and saving the world, like maybe you should be in an emergency response. Um, I've also have had the chance to represent clients like Domtar Paper. They're a family-owned brand that uses a sustainable approach to harvesting paper from trees. And they've been trying to figure out like how do we keep the life cycle of a paper going? Um, and then through my creative agency, I've been able to work with businesses and organizations and help them come up with their own logos and websites. um, and so these are the various ways that my career has touched environment and sustainability. I've also worked on causes like childhood cancer, workforce development, youth empowerment, women's rights, you know, anything that you care about, I promise you that there's an industry to work in. So, I think this is my last tip, just to keep growing and going. And full transparency, I'm 35 years old. And so I'm able to look at my life and see the trajectory I've had and all the, you know, kind of roundabouts. It's like life is not linear. So don't ever think that, you have to li live a specific path, a specific way. In my case, something that was traditional was that I went to high school. Um, I chose to go to college. I'm still paying off those student loans. Um, and then, after college, you're kind of on your own to figure out like, where do I go from here? So in following my fun, I moved to California from Massachusetts, built my own community there. And I've always, so I'm self-taught in graphic design. You've seen examples of me trying at it when I was a kid, and I've taken classes over the years, but I didn't go to school for it. And then I ended up creating a design agency because a lot of my friends would come to me for their logos or for their websites because they knew I was good at it and I loved, I loved doing it. And so what started off as a hobby and some side money eventually like became my full-time next job after I quit my full-time job. So this little fire here was when I had a big burnout because I was just doing too much and working in a very depressing field and just way too deep in the sad news and the weeds. Um, and so with my own company, I have found a way to make a difference, make a living, and have fun in my own way. So that's what I've been trying to do. How do you make a difference, make a living, and have fun? So these are just examples of the creative work that my team has made. We've been invited by companies like Google to come up with logos, and we've worked with small businesses to come up with their logos that they then turn into business cards, their website, their storefronts. And so, in this time of chaos, I just want to leave you all with the fact that courage is our currency. Creativity is our currency. We're all born with it. You don't have to be an artist to be creative. Community is our currency in this time as well. We need each other, and that's priceless. You can't buy friends, can't buy family. And we also need to get along and get on the same page and collaborate because we're all on the same planet, sharing the same air and the same water. And how might we use, all of these scents to make some change? So individually at Bombilla, we like to say that we are lit on purpose. So Bombilla means light bulb in Puerto Rican Spanish. And when you find what makes you come alive, what you have fun doing, and what brings you joy, you're lit. You're lit on purpose. And so if all of us are lit on purpose, inevitably we're going to make the world brighter. And that's the end of my presentation.